Okay, audio testing, audio testing. I can't hear myself. Audio testing. Okay. Audio testing. Is it sharper than before? Is it louder? Is it sharper? Is it more sensitive? Where this can be picked up? Can I speak a little further away? Can I speak a little further away? No, I don't think I can. Okay. So somewhere here. Okay. Be right back. Good evening, folks. Good evening. Let's see how well this is picking up, because now I got Nathan's help with a new sort of a, what would you call it, receiver. That this probably is more sensitive to pick up sound. I will still try my best to talk into the mic. But hopefully this can make my life a little easier. Okay, I just realized that I wasn't talking into the mic, so now I'm actually talking to the mic. Okay, great. So what I was saying is I'll just try to make sure everything works. Okay, so what you have just heard is a readable version of the Raindrop Nocturne. The Raindrop Prelude. What a blasphemy to say that it's a nocturne. Yes. Okay, but there's a reason why I play this in the concession of the work of today's discussion, because we're going to continue with Chopin Nocturne Opus 32, number 1, which is something that I called very underplayed, mostly due to competition pieces that try to exclude choices like this. So I will make a note of what the piece is about, and also certainly connect to what I've just played, which is the Raindrop Prelude. It's a terrible version. It's I missed things here and there. I don't know the score, so okay. So let's get to the Nocturne. So let me share the score again. I just changed my settings a little bit, so things may sound a little bit different. Please tell me. Unfortunately, I don't know how to turn the chat back on, so otherwise you can just tell me in chat. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna, find the score. Okay, this is going to take a while. Okay, I think we're up. Okay. Okay, so what you see on the screen right now is the familiar topic of Opus 32, number 1, the Nocturne we spoke about yesterday. And so I'm going to play just the opening once again, just to sort of remind you what this piece was about. Okay, I think there's an issue. Is this mic picking up the sound? Okay, I don't know. I need to find out how to open up the chat. I don't know how to do it. All right, if it doesn't, okay, if it doesn't work, okay, then I will try to. Actually, if it is very sensitive already, that is also picking up the piano sound, I will probably just go back to the original mic setup that actually doesn't pick up as much sound from the piano. I just want the two mics at the back of the piano to pick up the piano sound, not this one. Or maybe it may not be so bad. So I'm just going to roll with it. I'm going to listen to later. I'm going to listen to what I sound like. Okay, so this is back to main business, Opus 32, number 1. What you just heard is the opening page of this work. And we briefly spoke that we briefly spoke about the structure of the nocturne up to a point, and we also introduced 2 characters. So what I meant by the second character is actually on the second page. So if you recall a little bit, I'm going to play from the top of the page here. So I've already continued to the second page, but obviously you can hear that there is a part in the middle here that says forte piano, which means the 2 different characters, and actually the weaker one is actually Chopin himself. And then on the second repeats section, this part is in similar shape as the previous line, and this is again just a repetition of the same situation. Then I claimed that once we move past this sort of reconciliation of Chopin with George Sand, this external reconciliation after we turn a page, also same for you on the same page. This. You could just go on and just play other things, right? right? You can just go on and just play this, and that's it, as if nothing has happened. But what you are saying is you just go back, you just basically play then the next passage exactly the same thing again, going through the same situation, which is strong, weak, strong, and weak. And that's exactly how the score goes. That's exactly how everything else goes afterwards. So that really devalues the passage right between. So what I've highlighted here is the following. So the first measure here is Chopin reconciling with externally. Now, it leads actually very well into so if I don't play the middle four measures, it sounds perfectly fine. Like, it sounds pretty good still. But what's important here is after Chopin reconciles externally, he also needs to reconcile with himself. Sounded like the same episode, right? I'm going to point out that among all Chopin nocturnes that you have heard so far, they follow a very structured ABA, or they follow some kind of a rondo format, which I'm going to call those fragile vases. Right? These are the Opus 9 number 2s, and then these are the Opus 9 number 1s. You have repetitions of material. You do not have a clear soft, strong, soft transition. But in none of these work that we have spoken about, that has a moment like the one that we just had. So you basically repeat the, let's say, the quarrel, the argument section, if you will, one more time after Chopin reconciled with or expressed himself internally via this passage. So this is the first time how we ended here. We're here, like we're here. So the next time when Chopin needs to reconcile with him again, he went even higher. So this is a typical technique of Chopin, which is always just bring things an octave higher. And then so that when you're running down back to the original position, you have more material to work with. So my highlights is actually measure 60 right here. So instead, Chopin would play this. I could go on, right? If you don't want to play on, you can do this. Sounds like the end of a piece as well. That ends it, right? You can then also call it a very nice nocturne. And if Chopin had ended the work this way, then this piece will and should be considered of any concert program. Because if it just ended like that, or in some slightly more Chopinesque way, but less than what we are about to see, it is, you will have no argument of just putting this piece aside. Because if we just end it there, what have we heard? Twice of the same material, and then with just one small outburst, right? That's it, right? I'm just improvising here, just full of crap. But if I do that, then this work will be altogether full of crap. You would have just heard 2 times of the same material, of the same, let's say, the choral theme of the same section, and then an opening that has nothing to do with the later stuff. You will just have heard of that. Okay. Then that will be a terrible piece. It will be an awful piece. An awful piece. So what has Chopin done here then to make everything slightly more interesting? And not just interesting musically, but as a form of discourse, far more dramatic. So what are you thinking now? Maybe I should play this again. So. I'm not going to play on just yet. But what is this transition? There's already 2 things that you should notice. First of all, the first time that I heard this part, that I heard this transition, I call this the stomach dropping effect. Because it literally drops your stomach. onto the floor. Not you're sitting onto the floor. What is actually achieved here, I'm going to play it, is, so we're anticipating this. We're anticipating this, right? Because here, where I'm standing right here, is what I call the home key, which is the home key. But what Chopin did was this. This is what he did. That, this. If you were tired of the repetition before this, because you heard the same material twice, then you probably shouldn't feel so boring now. You shouldn't feel so bored now. Because this is a game changer. This is the game changer marked pianissimo, but its impact can be the loudest fortissimo in your face. So, now that we have arrived at a very dramatic turning point, there needs to be material that follows afterwards. But I forgot to mention there's one more facet of this turn. It's not only the harmony, or let's say the chord that it transitions to is out of your expectation, but there's also something rhythmic about the left hand. So I'm going to blow this up really a lot more, and so that you can see the asymmetry. So this is the dramatic turning, stomach dropping chord. Look at the left hand. It's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And hit very low, right? Very low. You heard something very low. The asymmetry, in the sense that Chopin could have just done all eighth notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He could have just done that, right? Could have just done that. And that will probably be pretty dramatic because the chord itself is dramatic already. But this polyrhythm, as we call it, this sounds like death to me. This sounds like you can say that, yeah, Beethoven wrote this, and then you have Mozart, who has done stuff in his Fantasia, right? I couldn't play it, so I'm gonna have to find the music for it. But all of these people, they have imitated sort of this. The destiny is knocking on the door type of deal. And they all sound very menacing. But the way that they did it is all with, let's say, even things. So, I mean, there are different approaches to this. There are different approaches to capture the same idea. And Beethoven did it very efficiently because that one motif led to the whole work, that entire symphony. Yet, Mozart was a persisting... You know what? Let me find the work. I think it's actually illustrative. Mozart... Yeah. Okay. Mozart 397. Yeah, Fantasia. Good. Okay, so I have it right on here. I'm not going to share it with you there, but I'm just going to play for you what Mozart was doing. So this is actually a pretty known tune. You may have heard of it. So this is Mozart's version of the Destiny is knocking on the door. So I'm gonna then frame back to what Chopin is saying here is this level of asymmetry is almost the level of hesitation of but within hesitation you also have urgency. There seems to be two type of different ideas that could even be contradictory. In my opinion, having hesitation and urgency is actually about the same level of drama. Because using so little, I think he captured so much. Okay, so this is just a brief discussion of our stomach dropping chord. Now, I'm going to take a step back because if we want to move on to the last bit, there's actually something that we need to understand a little more from the piece. There's actually something from the piece that I never spoke about, which is a shame because it should be spoken about as we start. That is actually the main motifs. So a similar structure of melody or maybe rhythm that appears often in the work. So, for example, now, does the opening material get repeated? Let me play it again. The opening material. Just listen. Okay, so this is the highest part of the melody. It should sound memorable. It doesn't appear again. It does not appear again later on. It only just gets repeated, but it doesn't get used in anything else. So, same thing, but it just gets repeated at the same location. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be something that's often used. What else is out there? Okay, maybe let's go to the second part where things show up a little bit differently. So, let's hear this again. I'm going to play the part that I think is important for you. So just listen. So too many things going on. I'll just play one hand. That's it. Just this. Just this. So right here. Just the top. So you also see a grace note, right? Yeah. If you trace it out without playing the rhythm, it sounds like this. And then you go on. Okay, da 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 dee da da. That there is a line, right? There is a line, and this is a very mundane line. It's not very special. Where else can we find something else that sounds like this? So, I mean, there's two parts to this, right? Da 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 dee da da. There's two parts. So a small rise and then the larger fall. Yes. So we may associate later on with any fall that to be part of this. So you certainly hear later on this. Here. You heard it, right? Multiple times it's a fall, but you can say that maybe this fall is a natural melodic construction, and there's nothing so special about it. Sure. Then I'm just gonna pick on because the stuff that I circled for you right here, it happened at the third line of the work, so it's really early on, and that's why I think it's important. Now you may say, okay, is there anything else that's also memorable that also gets repeated, gets used? So I'm going to mention now this one. So I'm circling the choral theme again, right? Well, this was played already. Right? Okay. Now, I'm going to go on here. Well, we knew this part was kind of a mirror of the earlier part. Versus. Just a little shift, right? And also tonality changed. It's a minor key here, but the shape didn't change. And you will find the same material that I mentioned earlier. You will see this appearing here again. Okay? And then we know the rest of the material are the same. Because I would just play it the same thing I would just play the same thing again, yes? Now, what's only different is going to be Chopin's internal reconciliation. Does that lead to anything? Well, we just came from it, right? This is very similar to or but what are we expecting? Okay. I don't know whether I made my point or not. There's no coincidence, I think. This is all I'm saying. There's no coincidence. This is a special section of Chopin's Nocturne development. Because I think up to this point, up to how many years have gone by? He's 26 now. So he has been composing Nocturne since very young. And then the first one that he published is 1830, so when he is 20 years of age. Opus 9. This one, Opus 9, the first one he published. So this is after 6 years of 6 years of maturing, and he has developed into, okay, I'm allowed to write repeated things, just like Opus 9 number 2. I can also invent ternary forms for nocturnes, where Opus 9 number 3 is one, Opus 15, 1 and 2 are both ternary forms. Opus 15 number 3 is a special one, let's kick it aside. Opus 27 number 1, this one, yeah, this one is a ternary form as well, with an extended ternary form in the middle, because there happens to be a mazurka somehow there. Sure, but it is still a ternary form. Everything returns. Now you go look at this Opus 32, number 1. Is there structure? yes, things gets repeated multiple times. So it sounds like Opus 9 number 2 all over again. Then you could have just ended the piece and make it basically an Opus 9 number 2 second version. Sounds pretty nice as well. This sounds like Opus 9 number 2. But we ended with a stomach dropping chord to just amplify the drama so much. Okay, if you think it was boring before, then take how boring that is and make it as dramatic as that stomach dropping chord is. Because this contrast is massive. And not to mention that, look at the last two lines. Just look at the last two lines here. First of all, usually we see measure bars, we see bars like the one here. So that's a bar. The bar is trying to separate the two different measures because the previous measure has 4 beats, and then the next one has 4 beats, and then they should be separated. The whole piece is based on 4 beats. If you look at the last line, where do I find a bar? I found a bar at Adagio, which is the last 2 bars. That's it. I don't find anything else. Okay. So what does this mean? Where do you see music that has no bars? Where do you see music that has no bars? If there's no bars, that means there's still time, but it doesn't mean that you have to count in 4 anymore. You can count in many other ways that you want to. If it's a solo, if it's a cadenza as in, for example, in a piano concerto, your cadenza is trying to show you play alone yourself, which is basically you have isolated yourself from the orchestra, and then you play a very virtuosic passage. And Mozart, in his time, he didn't write a cadenza. He just says, "Hey, it's a cadenza section now. You guys go play solo by yourself. Create it yourself. I have my own version. You do your own version." And then in the score, you usually don't see it written out, the cadenza being written out. In Beethoven's time, he does, because Beethoven is certainly more serious, I think, than Mozart. But so Beethoven actually wrote his own version of the cadenza, and he also invites other people to do their own cadenza if they think they can do better than Beethoven. Not many can. So he, but still, it's a cadenza. It is an isolated. It's an isolated expression of the material that is used in the work, and then you express it freely yourself. And this is important, express freely. This part, what I usually call it, is something called recitativo, or like a recitation. So recitation is usually something that you say, okay, I'm going to recite a poem, right? I'm going to recite a prose, right? This is, you have the freedom because you're the only person on stage, so you just do that. Here, this is the very moment. So let's end this part again. Fermata. No sound. Does it feel that the entire theater is dark except one spot on the stage? That somebody has the spotlight, very dim one, but it's a spotlight because you're alone. So So now the question is, did Chopin really reconcile with himself? Because this follows his self-reconciliation, which is, this is very noble. Where else do you find this kind of position? Where else? This is lengthy as well. There's only one place that I can mention is something that I've actually played. And there's actually a reason why I played Opus 27, number 1. I was trying to read it and trying to go through it quickly. But it happened very quickly. It's actually after this. So it was actually this Opus 27 number 1 that had almost a personal moment, but it was a pure outburst. It's one directional. It's fortissimo, 3 Fs. So it's one directional, in my opinion. And then you certainly cool down into the opening again, but it's one directional. And then you still have material to play. It's not like you ended on something in that. You have material to play, and that's it. But over here, the much needed highlight is that this ended the piece. This solo monologue ended the piece. And that's a rare thing to have. What was it before? It sounded much nicer before. It was this, but now it's this. And then, timidly, where did this happen? Where did this happen? I'm seeing that this is getting closer to 8 p.m., but I wanted to mention that Chopin also did something that is very unconventional. Remember, the piece, this is where I need to bring back the tonality of the work. The opening line sounds like this. The opening line sounds like this, right? Right? How did the piece end? This is how the piece ended. So Chopin went from what we call a major key into its relative minor key. It went from B major into B minor. This is not a classical transition, a sort of a transition, in a sense that usually it is a dark work that starts dark, but ends in major key. For example, Opus 15, number 3. It started dark piece, but then it ended like this. It ended like that. Ended as a compromise, but still positively. Okay. So this is the reverse. This is the reverse. And that's why I think Chopin is an extremely pessimistic person. But he passed those emotions and drama along in using his wonderful musical techniques. So I'm not going to explain more. This is already 8 p.m. This work deserves so much more attention because in terms of form, it stands by itself once again. So it's not just a ternary form. It's not just a rondo form where you have repetitions and that's it. And then there's no more things. There's a lot more things here. And actually from this point on, you will find that Chopin writes that every single piece has a very internal passage. Whether long or short, there's always one. So we are going to go on to Opus 32, number 2 tomorrow. And I will point out to you where I think that personal moment is, that recitativo moment is. And as we progress with Opus 37, number 1, and then number 2, which also, Opus 37, number 2 is the Notorious Nocturne, which I will also extend my invitation to Nathan No, who will perform this live. And so will he play Opus 48, number 1. I will gladly play Opus 48, number 2. So basically in all the nocturnes now, maybe you can even go back to the earlier nocturnes to say, can I find a recitativo, personal-like moments in these nocturnes? And then that may give you a different perspective on Chopin's nocturne work. They're not just pretty faces. They're not just pretty faces. In fact, some of them actually are pretty ugly faces. And they're real. They are real. Okay, enough of today. Enough of Opus 32, number 1. I hope that you have enjoyed this introduction to this wonderful underplayed work. And I wish more people play it. Okay, so I will see you tomorrow.